Let me fix this here. All right. So, for anyone new or even for returning people, SRQ Strong is a growing group of Sarasota County neighbors committed to learning about trauma and responding to its impact. As I mentioned earlier, with the pandemic and us moving to this virtual platform, our audience has grown far and wide across the nation and even internationally. So, it's very apparent that people are wanting to do the same thing that we're doing here in Sarasota worldwide. So our mission is to promote that community-wide trauma awareness through healing, education, action, and leadership. And our vision is to create a community that cares for itself. So ways that you can be involved, just like right now, be a part of the conversation that we host. We're doing them every other month online now. That's what we've been doing this year. So, joining these conversations, emailing us at sarasotastrong@gmail.com and letting us know what you want to talk about, because these topics are driven by the community and driven by you. So if there is a topic that you think we have not addressed or maybe we need to revisit, email us, let us know. My name is Annalise, and I'm going to be facilitating tonight's conversation. I am usually behind the scenes running everything and doing all the organizing and fun stuff, but I am actually doing it all tonight. And that is because tonight's topic is one that is very important to me. And oh, my screen is not going here. It froze. Give me just a second, guys. There we go. Yeah, suicide and suicidal behavior amongst youth and young adults is a major public health crisis. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among young people 10 to 24 years old in the United States. And those rates have been rising for decades. And I happen to be one of those individuals. And I actually shared my story for the first time publicly 2 years ago at a community conversation just like this one. And it was about suicide prevention and awareness and breaking down the stigma and the walls that made barriers around sharing what I had went through. I had carried so much shame about it and didn't want to talk about it. And as soon as I broke down that stigma within myself about talking about it, it opened up a whole new world to me. And suicide is complex, I'm sure everyone knows that, but it is still preventable and it affects all populations. Youth of any race, ethnicity, gender identity, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, or community may be at risk for suicide. So now more than ever, there is an urgent need for education about warning signs of suicide in young people, increased awareness about what people in our community are doing to prevent it, and where you, the community, can turn to help if you or a young person is thinking about suicide. So tonight we are going to hear from a few people in our community about those very things. So we have a couple of NAMI youth peer specialists with us here tonight, and they're going to share their personal experiences and also how they're helping provide connections and hope and youth and help and hope to youth and families. We also have someone from the school district here with us, actually a few people from the school district here with us tonight. We have a couple of school psychologists and also the lead school social worker. So we're gonna start off our evening tonight with our peer support specialists, Emily LaPlaca, who currently works with NAMI as a peer support specialist. And she is a recent graduate of New College, Florida with a bachelor's degree in psychology, and she's working to continue her education and pursue mental health counseling in the future. And also, Kelly is a peer recovery support specialist at the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI, which we're going to talk about a lot tonight. Kelly is also currently the president of Youth Move Suncoast, which is a peer mentor for youth and adults and works with a local program called Lean on Me, which some of you may have heard about. And it includes weekly visits to various middle schools in Sarasota County to teach life skills and mental health awareness. And then after they speak, we're going to move on to Alyssa, who is a national certified school psychologist for Sarasota County, and also Emmanuel, I think he likes to go by Manny, so I'm going to call you Manny if that's all right. He's also a full-time psychologist for Sarasota County Schools, has worked with school psychologists as a school psychologist for 16 years with K through 12 students. And then we also have Ms. Jody Smith, who has been an employee with the Sarasota County School District since 2003. So she has been serving in the community for a very long time. She's also served on the Florida Suicide Prevention Coalition Board and continues to serve as one of their regional directors. So I'm gonna go ahead and wrap that up there, and I'm gonna turn it over to our speakers now. So Kelly, Emily, I'm not sure who you wanted to go first, but you can pick as you choose, whoever wants to go.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily LaPlaca. Like Annalise said, I'm a peer specialist at NAMI, and with this job, I basically get to use my lived experience with mental health to connect with and support others. And because of my own battle with suicidal ideation and a past suicide attempt, I'm passionate about advocating for suicide awareness and prevention. So I'm really grateful to get to share my story here today. So like I said, because of my job, I've become comfortable disclosing what I've been through, but this is actually the first time I will ever talk openly about my suicide attempt. But before I discuss that, it's important to go back to the beginning of my journey to recovery. So growing up, I was always a little more on the shy and anxious side, but I was very happy. I loved my family and friends, I loved animals, and I loved being a kid. But when I was 10 years old, something within me changed completely. One night, as I was trying to go to sleep, I became consumed with overwhelming guilt, shame, anxiety, and fear. Even though I was not raised very religious, I suddenly became obsessed with the fear of sinning and going to hell. I believed that I was receiving messages from God about what was truly right versus wrong. But in this delusion, I was convinced that even little things like tying my shoelaces wrong was a sin. As a kid, I had no idea how to make sense of this. I had no knowledge of mental illness or that something like this could even happen, which made me even more convinced that this was a reality. And I had no idea how to talk about it to anyone. But it was very apparent that I was going through something really difficult. I was crying all the time. I couldn't leave my mom's side, and I couldn't go to school. I basically couldn't function at all. Thankfully, my family immediately began looking for help and answers. Finally, we found out I had PANDAS. PANDAS is a cute acronym for a really misunderstood condition. PANDAS stands for Pediatric Autoimmune Neuropsychiatric Disorders Associated with Strep Infections. Honestly, I'm surprised I got that right. So as a simple explanation, I had a strep throat infection and it crossed my blood-brain barrier and started attacking my brain. So that is where my sudden onset of severe psychiatric symptoms came from. Even though I was able to take medications and receive mental health services that helped significantly, I still spent the rest of my childhood, teenage years, and even young adulthood struggling with mental illness. Throughout those years, I struggled with OCD, anxiety and depression, self-harm, and suicidal ideation. If I sat here and talked about everything that happened during this time, I would be here for hours, but I could say with confidence that there was a point where I hit absolute rock bottom. When I was 15 years old, there was one day that I was visiting my grandparents and decided to look in their medicine cabinet. My grandpa had health issues, so something in me possessed me to steal his blood pressure medications, diabetes medications, and painkillers. Looking back on this, I can't believe that there was a time I was so desperate to end my life that I was willing to let the consequences of that roll over onto so many other people that I loved and that loved me. When I got home, I took the pills. I'm not sure how long passed before I became dizzy and nauseous, and I don't remember anything after that. My mom tells me that I began throwing up and told her that I took pills, so she took me to the hospital where they gave me charcoal to help get it out of my system. Thankfully, we were able to do so before something tragic happened. At the time when I realized what happened, I was not thankful, I was angry. It's hard to explain how you're feeling when you decide that you don't want to be alive anymore. But for me, it's even harder to explain the feeling of attempting that and quote unquote failing. When it was clear I was still at risk to attempt to end my life again, my family decided the only thing that had the chance of helping me was residential treatment. So, what helped me get to where I am today? Before residential treatment, I participated in partial hospitalization program where I learned cognitive behavioral therapy. My improvement was significant, but I still really struggled with depression. I was later at a residential treatment program that I mentioned where I learned dialectical behavior therapy. To this day, I believe learning and practicing DBT saved my life. Today, I still take medications and attend therapy for my mental health conditions, but I am stable enough to work a full-time job, graduate from college and continue my education, be in a healthy long-term relationship, maintain friendships and connections, take care of myself and others, and I have worked on my relationships with my family so that they could forgive me, and most importantly, I could forgive myself. I can confidently say that I'm happy and grateful to be alive and that I'm living proof that things really can get better. Of course, it's not so simple as just being resilient or deciding to choose recovery. Although this is a huge factor, a big part of my recovery was having access to a combination of resources and support. In residential, I was able to meet other people my age dealing with similar issues, and I realized that nobody is alone in their battle with any kind of mental health issue, and that there is community and support available when people feel empowered and unashamed to talk about their own experiences. The key word here is community. I believe a big reason why suicide is an epidemic in the United States is because we're so focused on individualism. It's hard to find community and support unless you build it for yourself. I'm not here speaking today as someone who studies psychology and has done research on different types of therapy and mental illnesses. I cannot offer a solution for preventing suicide, but I'm here today as a peer and a survivor to emphasize the importance of what we are doing here today, creating a space for community and support. I'm thankful that I had a support system in my friends and family and access to mental health resources. I recognize that this played a huge role in my recovery and that not everyone struggling with mental health issues has those privileges. So that brings me to where I am now as a peer specialist at NAMI and my take on suicide prevention as a survivor. For those of you who don't know, NAMI is a nonprofit organization that offers free support groups and mental health services. NAMI has spent years advocating to end the stigma surrounding mental health and increase the information and education available about mental illnesses. NAMI acknowledges that factors such as socioeconomic status, location, race and ethnicity, sexuality, religion, etc., can be factors in mental health struggles, as well as trouble accessing mental health resources. The fact that NAMI employs peers with lived experience is life-changing. As someone pursuing a career in counseling who has both education and experience, I never thought that I would be valued based on my real-life experience over what I've learned in a classroom. As a peer specialist, I get to authentically connect with people based on shared lived experience. I get to be an actual role model for a person in recovery, not just a professional that says everything will be okay. Some days I can't help but wonder how much easier or quicker my recovery would have been if I had a peer specialist to confide in and relate to when I was struggling most. So my message for today is that peer support has a huge role in suicide prevention, especially for youth. The more people like me and Kelly become empowered to share our stories, the more people like us are likely to recover themselves. So based on this perspective, you all attending today and listening to my story has played a role in suicide prevention in itself. So thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to SRQ Strong for allowing me to be here and share my story.
Thank you so much, Emily. Honestly, like every word that you were saying, I don't want to get too much into it now because I want to be able to talk to it at the end, and I want to get over to Kelly. But thank you so much. Kelly, it's all you, girl.
All right. Thank you so much, Emily. I love hearing your story. It's incredible, and I'm so happy that you're still here. So my name is Kelly Boucher. It's spelled with an ER, even though it's pronounced like it should have an AY at the end of it. I don't know. It's French or something like that. But I'm a peer support specialist at NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, like Emily, and I am also a suicide survivor. I want to start by saying that if you told me even 2 years ago that I would be in front of a screen of like 60 people telling the story, I would have laughed. So it's really cool that, like, with the help of NAMI, I'm able to do this. Hi, Alyssa. So I was hired in this position, much like Emily, because I have my own lived experience. And the best way I can explain that is, would you want to take advice from somebody who thinks they know how to handle something, or somebody who has actually done it? So that's something that's really cool that NAMI lets you do. I graduated from college with a degree in social work, but no class or textbook would ever have better prepared me for this position than walking through the steps of mental health by myself. Stigmatizing as it may be for some, I'm finally able to talk about my personal suicide ideation and attempts and mental health struggles. I've had 2 attempts in my life, although I'm only going to speak on one, and you'll see why. I was about 14 when I moved to Florida, and I always tell people that that's the worst age to move, because I don't know if anyone here is in middle school, but middle schoolers are mean, or they can be. They're not all mean, but they can be vicious. And I'm not sure if it was just because I was a new girl or because I was insecure and shy, but I was the target for pretty much every bully in that school. The saying "sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me" is far from correct. Monday through Friday, I was hearing horrible things about myself and dealing with inappropriate behaviors. At one point, I even had like my clothes ripped, and then I had a whole water bottle dumped on me, and I had to go to my classes soaking wet, and it was embarrassing. So this is when I noticed symptoms of depression, hopelessness, and suicide ideation. I avoided telling people about these strange thought patterns for 2 specific reasons. First, I think I was so young that I didn't really know that life wasn't supposed to
Freeland. Yes, I'll make sure, Brian. You bet.
And once I
So
figured
sorry about that. I don't know what keeps happening there. Ronald, I think you might keep hitting your mic. I might have to boot you if you keep doing that. Thank you. Go ahead, Kelly.
Once I figured out that that's not what life should feel like, I was too ashamed to really give people any other reason to bully me anymore or make me seem crazy. So I just kept it to myself. And as time went on, my symptoms got stronger, and I found myself picking up really strange habits like drug use and abuse at a young age, risky activities, impulsivity, drawing and constantly thinking about pain and death, which was the start of my suicide ideation, and then eventually self-harm. Self-harm served as a form of release for me. I think I lost the ability to feel emotions. Therefore, any pain reminded me that I was still a human being and I still could feel things, even if it was not good things. The pictures I would draw, this is one I bring up a lot because it was just so weird to me. I'm not a violent person at all, but like the pictures I was drawing were very disturbing and it was alarming. So fortunately, I had a supportive adult in my life, and I got lucky because, like I said, I didn't really ask for help. My mom knows me probably better than I know myself, and she was observant enough to notice my mood changes, constant panic attacks, and the lifelessness in my eyes. She played a huge role in stopping my self-harm. Once she found out about it, we made a deal that I could text her an emoji. For some reason, it was like the little red monster emoji. And that was my way of saying, like, I'm thinking about doing it and I need somebody with me. We wouldn't talk about it. We would just watch Grey's Anatomy, honestly, but it worked. Without her help, I'm sure that the cutting and destructive decisions would have caused a lot more harm in the future. So after a bit of support and therapy and then eventually medication, I was stabilized. But I went through my first 2 years of, I went through my first 2 years of college and was doing really well. And then one night I was taken advantage of at a party. This flipped my whole recovery on its head, and I was almost right back to where I was 14 years ago, although I had some new strange habits. This was when I was met with intense OCD, isolation, and incredibly strong urges to exercise all the time. Exercise gives the natural dopamine, so I think much like the self-harm, I relied on it to feel some sort of emotion. I lost my appetite for a long time, I think due to the depression, and then I found myself really enjoying the feeling of being hungry. This is when the most difficult mental health challenge I've ever been faced with or dealt with hit me, anorexia nervosa with bulimic tendencies. Bulimia is not always throwing up. It can also just be like excessive exercise, purging your body of any calories in any way. And I was doing both. I won't get into too much of the chaos of my daily routine at that time, but let's just say I was always moving and I was always thinking about food and death. Once I got to I eventually got to the point where I started thinking, why would I sleep if I could exercise and burn calories? So I would run back and forth from my room until 4 o'clock in the morning. As my weight dropped rapidly, it was becoming clear that I was very sick, and reluctantly I went into a residential treatment for a total of 5 months. While I was in there, I learned that my eating disorder and self-harm was a slow and painful attempted suicide. It's crazy because when I imagine suicide attempts, I picture thoroughly planned out steps, but when you hit rock bottom, sometimes your brain stops working correctly, especially when it's malnourished. I knew that what I was doing to my body was terrible, but I didn't care. My heart shrunk about 2 times the normal size, and I had early onset osteoporosis, and I just was not a human being anymore. I remember muttering to my mom, I'd let this take my life, and I genuinely meant it. Today, I'm in a much better place than I was in the past. I'm still met with some undesirable symptoms, but they are few and far between. I want to thank SRQ Strong for all of the work they do and for allowing me to come and speak my truth. And if you take anything away from my story, I would like it to be that suicide ideation and attempts are not always what you see in movies. They can be sneaky and persistent, but there is a way out. And again, I want to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to be here. And you are the reason that some people are not going through with their suicide attempts. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kelly. And I have to point out real quick, because that sticks and stones quote always stuck with me. And in the back of my mind, I was always like, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words leave unseen bruises. Like internally, you are just beaten, and it doesn't matter if it's not physical, it still impacts you just as much. So I had to point that one out real quick. But thank you both, Kelly and Emily, for your stories and for sharing. And I'm sure you're seeing everyone flooding the chat over here. We're all enamored by you, and we're all so glad that you were here, because you guys are those prime examples that, it's not the end. There's definitely a way out. There's a light at the end of the tunnel. So just thank you from the bottom of my heart personally as well. And now we're gonna switch gears a little bit, and we're gonna go over to Jody and Manny and Alyssa and their team. So take it away. I know you guys are kind of doing this all together. So Jody.
Yes, hi everybody. I'm going to go ahead and start. And my name is Jody Smith, and I work as the lead school social worker for the school district. And actually, youth suicide prevention has been my professional passion for many, many years. And you just have to go to a school one time after a suicide, and the impact on the teachers and the staff in a whole and the students. I kept thinking somebody's got to do something about this. And I thought, well, I'm a somebody, right? So I started to get very involved in the cause and in the prevention of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover a piece of the school district has taken a very strong stance on suicide prevention. We're doing everything we can to try to change those statistics and help with awareness of warning signs, of risk factors. And one of those things is the Youth Mental Health First Aid. So that program, it's one of the, I'll give you an overview of it, but it's one of the interventions that we do in the school district. So Youth Mental Health First Aid is a training that is offered and required by the school district. The training was created in Australia in the year 2000, and now it's expanded to like 25 countries. The school district here in the state of Florida, we have it mandated that at least 80% of our relevant staff needs to be trained in this program, this Youth Mental Health First Aid. So this includes our school bus drivers, the school bus aides, all across in varying roles and responsibilities within the school district. So what this training helps to do is it helps people personally identify and understand the signs and the mental health concerns of both mental health and substance abuse, and it provides personnel with the next steps to find a person or offer those resources for somebody that is struggling. So the one thing I do want to emphasize is that a youth mental health first aider is not a therapist. They don't provide therapy. They don't diagnose. What they do is they keep that person safe and they get them to the resource or the person that is better equipped from a mental health status to help that person. So it's like a 6-hour program that we go through with our staff. They do 2 hours of work on their own, like self education through the program, and then 4 hours that is direct instruction with a youth mental health first aid provider. So you're not expected if you anybody can go and become a youth mental health first aid. This is not just exclusive to the schools. You can get on there. Anybody can do this. And the main thing I want to also say is it does not supersede anything else like a district policy or program that we might be doing. So if an individual is in crisis and they need to have what we call now, it used to be called a Baker Act, but now it's called an involuntary examination, or if there needs to be a mandated report made for the safety of that student. So I'm trying to think, where's my book, my handy dandy book? I had all my stuff here. Here it is. So this was the book for the trainer. I don't know if you can see it very well, but we go through this as a trainer, and the staff have found it really, really helpful in being able to be aware, just noticing in the classroom if a child's behavior is changing. And one of the myths we always hear about is, if you mention suicide, if you bring it up, then you're putting that idea in their head. And a lot of times from so many I've spoken to, the one thing they're waiting for is somebody to ask them something as simple as, are you okay? So that is one of the programs that we do. And I'm going to turn it over to Manny, and he's going to talk to you about the suicide risk assessment that we now do in the school system if we have a concern about a student that may be having suicidal ideation.
Thanks, Jody. So again, I'm Manny Dancy. I'm a school psychologist with Sarasota County Schools. I've been a school psychologist for about 16 years, and I worked in Savannah, Georgia. I worked in Fort Myers. I've been to Sarasota County for the last 8 years. I think it's 8 years. So we've had a lot of training to kind of get us prepared. Like Jody mentioned, the youth mental health counseling and those type of things that we have. So when we get to the point where we may have someone that is reported to have some suicide ideation or some suicidal intent, we will perform what's called a suicide risk assessment. And we just recently had a training where we had, our representatives from each school, our school-based mental health service providers, which is just certified school psychologists, school social workers, school counselors, or even a licensed mental health professional who's employed or contracted by the district. And on top of that, Sarasota County Schools is fortunate enough to have school resource officers. So those teams were there at the beginning of the school year to get updated training with the suicide risk assessment. And that assessment, again, is conducted by the school-based mental health service provider. And the goal is to kind of determine the level of suicide risk and plan of action for a student that may be experiencing suicidal ideation or some suicidal intent. So there's a couple of procedures that we actually put in place with this assessment. And one of them is just being able to, if it's reported, whether by a teacher or a student, the first thing is to kind of bring that to the school suicide risk assessor. And then the next step will be to inform parents. And for parents that are out there, it's always very important, whether it's this or anything else, I always like to tell parents to be sure to have updated contact information, because that's very important for us to be able to kind of communicate with parents, to let them know if we get to this point, if we have a concern, our role is to notify parents of the suicidal risk, the statement of harm, and we can even go into details in terms of what was reported. Number two, again, this is a phone call that we make to parents, and as a parent myself, that this could be a very high stress phone call. So we try to ensure parents let them know that their child is safe with us. We give location of where they're at, who they're with, and we kind of explain the procedures in terms of what will be next step. And that procedure will be to really kind of judge the severity of the risk. And what we do here at Sarasota County Schools, we use the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale to help with that suicide risk assessment. Just as a side note, each district can kind of choose how they go about completing the suicide risk assessment. We just chose the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale to help with that procedure. Now, still on the phone with parent, just walking you through the process. After we let them know about the assessment, we do inform parents of any de-escalation strategies that we have attempted or are currently attempting to kind of keep the child calm. And there are cases, not too many, where we may be unsuccessful in keeping that child de-escalated. So we also let parents know if we are unable to do that, that we also have a procedure where we will actually have the mobile response team, which their job is just to help with the de-escalation process with a student that's in crisis. And again, we like to get that verbal consent from parents to say, hey, yes, you may go forward with this assessment. So the suicide risk assessor will actually go forward with that assessment, and we notify parents that, we will update them as soon as possible with this process. So the Columbia Suicide Severity Rating Scale, we're looking at, again, the statement or concern that was reported. We look at some risk factors, whether there's a history of suicide attempts or anything like that. We looked at some protective factors as well, because that's very important. The young lady just mentioned earlier in terms of, I think it was, which one you girls mentioned your mother was available. Kelly mentioned that. So again, what protective factors that may be available to the students, we look over those. And then at the end of that assessment, we make a determination. So currently we look at 4 different determination levels of suicide risk. We would look at to see whether or not if it's an unfounded suicide risk, where there's really no evidence of the suicide action, behavior, or anything like that. And then there's the next level where there's a low suicide risk, where there may be some risk factors involved, but the protective factors are kind of stronger. And the student may have mentioned something, but there's no real plan or no intent to actually move forward. The next level would be the moderate suicide risk, where the student may have multiple risk factors, and a lot of times those risk factors kind of outweigh those protective factors. And the student may have a plan, but still may not have no intent or no plan to actually move forward with that. And then the last level is the high suicide risk, where there's a significant amount of risk factors involved with a student. the protective factors are very minimal and they may be at real risk of making a suicide attempt. So those are kind of, again, those determinations of risk level. And based on those levels, there's some decisions that the team and then that suicide risk assessor will have to make. We want to get back with the parents to kind of communicate what the findings are. We talk about those de-escalation strategies. We try to, which is real important because sometimes information and communication is key. So we want to be able to kind of conduct this assessment within about, as soon as possible, but also be able to track what we're doing with our databases. We use a service called Ed Plan, where we record this actual assessment, and we want to be able to have that available because, again, there are certain policies involved where we must record and have a plan of action afterwards. Safety plan is also a possible outcome of the suicide risk assessment, whether or not one needs to be developed for the student. And on top of that, sometimes if it's very severe, we will involve our school resource officer to kind of help with those next step determinations. So that's a very quick explanation of what the suicide risk assessment entails. And just to give you some numbers, again, just to see what this looks like in terms of since we started implementing this, this plan of action, real quickly, let me just go over some numbers. So from 2018 to 2019, we started off with about 539 suicide risk assessments that were completed. And the following years, those numbers did increase to where last year we had a total of 989 suicide risk assessments completed. Now, another piece of data to kind of look at, Jody kind of mentioned in terms of what used to be called Baker Acts, but involuntary examinations. In 2018-19, we were around 116 involuntary examinations. And those numbers did rise to about the 230 mark around 2019, 2020, 2021. But we did see a very sharp decrease in those involuntary examinations, whereas last year we had a total of 64. So I would like to thank, again, with all the training that we're receiving, the awareness that's been around within school settings, a lot of different see something, say something type of mentality that's been happening with students and staff. I would like to think that's been very effective in terms of having those lower numbers. Anything you ladies would like to add? I'm speaking more towards Jody and Alyssa that I may have forgotten.
I don't think so. Since we've been using the mobile response team, I think the diversion has been like 87% of those that we were able to de-escalate the child and not move forward on an involuntary examination. So, because we know that in itself is a traumatic event for a child to go through that process. So being able to divert that and find other ways that we can get the child de-escalated, put the supports and the referrals in place for that child so that they can move forward. So that's been it's one of the best pieces of information, honestly, that we've had out of the data that we've seen is that decrease in the Baker Acts or involuntary examinations. So we have seen from 2017 to 2019, which is like the most recent data I've been able to get my hands on. But we started out with middle schoolers. I think it was I don't know, it increased by middle schoolers increased their mental health experiences as in trauma, like by 4 point some percent. So that's really a significant raise in concerning behavior. We used to see it more in high schoolers, but the middle schoolers seem to be the ones that are more exponentially growing as far as showing signs of mental health distresses. So, and I think we can turn it over to you, Alyssa.
All right, I'll go ahead and I'll launch this. We have just a quick little interactive poll for you guys that we're going to run through. So I'll launch that here for everyone. And just go through, Alyssa, I don't know if you want to read them off as people are going through and answering them, and then I'll go ahead and display the results and we can talk about them afterwards.
All right, so number one is if I ask a student about suicidal ideation, I will put the idea in his or her head, and Jody already addressed this in her part of the conversation tonight. So that's when, you know, I'm hoping most people already know. If a student really wants to die by suicide, there is nothing I can do about it. Students who talk about suicide all the time are not actually suicidal. Therefore, you don't need to take the statement seriously. Suicidal individuals do not make future plans. If a person attempts suicide once, he or she remains at constant risk for suicide throughout life. If a person shows improvement after a suicidal crisis, the risk has passed. And if a suicidal individual is stopped from using one method, they will find another way to die by suicide.
Thank you, Alyssa. We'll give everyone a couple minutes to fill that in. It's important to acknowledge these statements because you don't know. Sometimes you don't know.
And I think, you know, addressing what you were saying earlier about that stigma surrounding suicide, you know, there is a lot of misinformation out there that we want to be able to address because we have so many people in our schools and communities that are working with people, you know, that might have these suicidal thoughts. We want to make sure they have the right information and can direct them to the right place.
Absolutely. Still got some more people answering here. Thank you guys for interacting with us too and engaging with us. It's all a part of breaking down the stigma, is getting the community involved. And like Alyssa said, you know, if we don't talk about it, people aren't going to know. So thank you for being here and engaging with us and following along with this conversation. Give about another minute here. Some people may be on their phones or driving, so I know not everyone that's here is actually able to participate in this. All right. I don't see any more coming in, so I think I'm going to go ahead and end it. And then I'm going to share the results with everyone. And then Alyssa, you can go through them one by one with your additional information there.
Okay. So looking at number one, if I ask a student about suicidal ideation, I will put the idea in his or her head. So that is a myth. Asking about someone about suicide won't make them suicidal. It actually provides an opportunity for the student or, you know, person to unburden themselves or and learn source of assistance. So, you know, that question of, are you okay? Gives them that opportunity to say, no, I'm not, I need help. And if they're not having suicidal thoughts, then that conversation also provides an opportunity to talk with them about what to do if they or a friend ever do have suicidal thoughts. And is important when we're talking about that misinformation. So number two is if a student really wants to die by suicide, there is nothing I can do about it. That is also a myth. Suicide is absolutely preventable. We have people on this call tonight, you know, where suicide was prevented. That's amazing. Even people at the highest risk for suicide are still ambivalent about desiring death and desiring life. Typically, they just want something to change. They want somebody to ask them how they're doing. You know, something in their life needs to be different. And number three, students or people who talk about suicide all the time are not actually suicidal. Therefore, you don't need to take the statement seriously. And that is a myth. Youth or other people who make suicidal statements typically have some risk for suicide. About 80 to 90% of people who died by suicide did express their intention to one and more often more than one person. So, you know, even when they're asking for help, that person that they're asking help from might not know where to go. They might not have that resource. So we want to make sure that we give that to people. All suicidal statements should be taken seriously. That's why in the Sarasota School District, we have those SRAs, because if someone makes those statements, we want to make sure that we're assessing that risk. And even if it's a low risk, okay, well, what's our plan moving forward with that student? Because while it might be low now, it's possible in the future that it could become a higher risk. Number 4, suicidal individuals do not make future plans. And that is a myth. Many individuals who died by suicide had future plans. For example, like they planned future activities or a trip or something like that. So we're not always looking at someone who's like giving away all their stuff or, making very final statements about something. They may have future plans and, they still have that thought in their head that they may, attempt suicide at some point. Lost my train of numbers here. So
I think you're on 5, yeah.
Thank you. If a person attempts suicide once, he or she remains at constant risk for suicide throughout life. That is also a myth. Most individuals who survived a suicide attempt do not make further attempts. Suicidal behavior is often very situational. Number 6, if a person shows improvement after a suicidal crisis, the risk has passed. That is a myth. I'm sorry, a fact, so sorry. Most suicides occur within 3 months or so, and I'm so sorry, that is a myth. I'm confusing my facts and myths here, guys. Most suicides occur within 3 months or so after the onset of improvement, when the person has the energy to act on the intentions, say goodbyes, and put their affairs in order. So typically, somebody that's thinking about dying by suicide is going to have a plan in place. They're thinking about the people in their life, their loved ones, and they may be looking for somebody to stop them. Someone, that's going to be able to point them in a direction, the different direction that they need in order to keep that from happening. And number 7, if a suicidal individual is stopped from using one method, they will find another way to die by suicide. And that is also a myth. Research has shown us that if a specific method is removed and not available, suicidal individuals are very unlikely to seek another method. So when we in the school district are doing those risk assessments, one of the questions on the severity rating scale is asking if they have a plan, what that plan looks like, and do they have access to the means to carry out that plan. So when we're looking at risk, if a person has that method, they have their plan, they know they have access to that, and we take that away, it's highly likely that they are not going to seek another method, and we can stop that from happening.
Thank you for going through all those, Alyssa, and for helping dissolve some of that misinformation, because as you can see on some of those results, some people didn't know, but now we know, and that's what these conversations are about, is making sure that the community is provided with the right information that they need to be able to help people or even help themselves and people around them. So now is the fun part, the Q&A, where everyone gets to everything that they've been holding in that they have been wanting to ask. And I know a lot of people have been. Gabrielle, she was our first one with their hand up. So I'm going to go ahead and we'll go ahead and allow you guys to unmute yourselves and ask questions. So go ahead, Gabrielle.
Hi, I'm wondering, my question is about regarding the school district, because it seems like the government right now has made it so that the government is putting all the precious LGBT kids at huge risk. And if an LGBT kid comes to any school counselor or anyone in the school district, teacher, etc., and says that they are considering suicide or anything like that, and they mention that they're LGBT or T or QIA or anything, that teacher or counselor is required to tell the parents, and children know if their parents are safe to tell, or if their parents are going to abuse them or kick them out of the house and are completely not safe to tell. And so it seems that I'm just wondering, what can possibly be done to help these precious children and teens and tweens who have absolutely nowhere to go, because if they tell, they might be putting themselves at huge risk of abuse by their sick parents or being kicked out. It just seems like such a nightmare, and it seems like there's no help for them.
Yeah, it's a tough situation within the school system, though. Our primary concern is to keep that child safe. That is our number one concern, whatever that's going to look like for that child. So I hear what you're saying. We have to operate within the confines of the law and policies. So I'm not going to really say any more on that. Other than I hear you. I hear you. And we do the best we can in the school system. Like I said, our major priority, our number one priority is to keep that child safe.
Thank you, Gabrielle. That was a really good question. And I know it's a kind of a difficult one that we're faced with right now. And I think the most important thing is that from without the school system, we just continue that advocacy as much as we can, and be as loud as we can. That way we can give the school the support that they need, to not feel like they're in a bind or have their hands tied. So let's go to, unless anyone else wanted to add anything, I'll go ahead and move to Jenny. She had her hand up next.
So I just wanted to say that school board meetings are happening, and anyone who cares about LGBT kids can make their voices heard at those school board meetings, because it is an opportunity to save lives. They are deciding policies that will affect these children.
Absolutely. Thank you for adding that.
So my question was, how do you make youth or anyone really in the conversation feel safe enough to disclose their ideation? I know in my experience, a lot of people are concerned about the involuntary examination. You're just going to put me into a crisis unit and I'm going to get locked up for a few days and then I'm going to get released and I'm going to have the same symptoms. And, I know that there's a lot more support you can give someone, but that stigma attached to admitting that you're having this ideology. So what would you do to combat that in that conversation with them that reassures them enough to open up to you?
I can kind of speak to that. Again, the hope is that, in my eyes, it takes courage to even admit, the thoughts that they may be having at that time. Our job is to create a safe space for them. Our job is to be sure that not only that they're safe, but they're also supportive. With the suicide risk assessment, at least when I have conducted those, my approach is that this is, number one, a procedure to be sure that not only you're safe, but others around you are safe. And number two, you have a protective barrier, for lack of words, that know that you have professionals on campus that are here to support you. Now, the whole experience itself can be very scary, very terrifying, but the follow-up after these assessments, I think, are key as well to provide those supports, whether it is referrals to mental health counseling, whether there is just continued mentorship with students. So again, it may vary from each assessor, but again, the whole purpose of the assessment is to create a safe space to have that discussion and create supports for the student that is coming forward. The amount of courage it takes to be able to admit that is immeasurable. So typically that's the approach I would take.
So my question to you is, when you're completing this assessment, if someone does admit that they're having ideations, are you mandatory obligated to report this somewhere or to, get them a certain type of help? Or is it something that you can just recommend therapy and they can feel good about saying, I'm admitting this to you without, I don't want to say consequence, because I don't think it's a consequence, but it can be viewed that way?
And like mentioned earlier, again, there are different levels of risk. And again, just admitting, there's other factors that may be involved.
Just because you make a statement, sorry, Manny, I didn't mean to interrupt, but just because you make a statement that you're having some suicidal ideation does not automatically mean that you have to go for an involuntary examination. We may be able to put supports in place, get that student what they need, make those referrals for that child. It's only in the most extreme cases where a child will tell us that they have a plan, they do intend to end their life, that we are going to be looking at that involuntary examination. We want to make it as least traumatic but as supportive as we need to make it, but we don't go from like 0 to 60 the minute a child tells us that they're having a hard time or struggling with their mental health, that we immediately think that they need to have an involuntary examination. So I think that we've gotten very good about that at the school as far as pulling those resources. Yes, of course, we do have to pull parents in. They are the parents, and offer them supports also, because it's very traumatic for a parent also to find out or hear that their child is struggling with their mental health. So I would find it a very comprehensive approach, because everybody's going to need support to help that child. But I think we really have a strong community within the school to make those things happen, and to get the word out. And then of course we have our community partners that we can make those referrals to. I would have to say, like, the number one risk factor for a student is whether or not they have had a previous attempt. That is our number one risk factor. For me, as far as a warning sign, and there's a long list of them, as you know, but would be hopelessness. Because the children I have worked with, it's like Manny was saying, like, when they lose hope, when they think their situation is not going to change, is like the number one red flag for me. Because for kids to say, oh, 2 weeks from now, or they're like, I can't live like this for another day. I just, this is never going to end. This is my life. You say, oh, well, when you grow up, you'll be able to make your own decisions. You'll be able to live your life your way. You'll be able to, whatever the situation might be, that's an eternity for a 14-year-old, So we need to be really aware of listening, or sometimes it's just kind of reading between the lines with those kiddos as far as that hopelessness factor. I always tell, like, the teachers, like, look for a change in behavior. We're always going to have those quiet kids. They're just introverted, quiet children. But if you've got that extrovert that always is coming in and hey and hi to the teacher and just like, the life of the party, and then suddenly they're coming in and they've got the hoodie pulled over, they've quit the basketball team, they're not going out with a friend, they're not taking care of their hygiene. So we really want to look at a change in behavior. If that child is just typically always quiet, that doesn't mean that they may have suicidal ideation. So and some are very quiet about it. There's very, very, very rarely, almost never, is there just one thing that caused that child to go into that suicidal ideation. Often there's other mental health components that have been there that are contributing. It may be something situational that's come up, the breakup of a relationship, a parent's getting divorced, things like that, that may impact, but there's never solely ever one reason that causes that. Like, Emily, I think you were talking about like I'm sorry, I'm getting like mixed up between the two, but with the pandas, right? I mean, like there was something else that was contributing to your ideation, and often that is. And if you're struggling with anorexia, you're not clear-minded, right? And thinking. So we have to look at all those contributing factors. That's kind of my spiel on it. It's the hopelessness really for me. If I notice that a child has lost hope in their situation, I'm gonna be Johnny on the spot with getting that child some resources and some support, because they need to know somebody cares, and they need to feel like it's not going to last that way for them forever.
I thank you
And
for those responses, because I just think so many people think if I speak up, I'm not going, they're going to say they're going to help me, but it's not going to be the help I really need. So that's great to hear that you guys are very multifaceted in your responses.
Jenny, I have to tell you, I am so proud to be a part of the school district because we take this seriously. We're in our jobs because we love these kids. We want to keep them safe. We want to get them what they need. And we do work as a team. I mean, we collaborate all the time with, you know, some kids might have an attachment to the custodian, the lunch lady, the bus driver, we don't know, but the fact that we communicate, that we support each other, and the kids, I don't think we say or do anything that makes a child feel judged or embarrassed or less than. I would say almost like 100%. It's like, we're just so glad that you told us. We're so glad that you have reached out, and we're proud of you. You are so brave. I mean, we give them a lot of kudos and support because what they did was remarkable, you know. And I think I hope that we're in the safer place that I think kids are reaching out and talking more and more about their mental health than they ever have before.
Absolutely. I mean, I can be a testament to that, you know, being someone who, you know, now in my early 30s, when I was 15 for my suicide attempt, you know, I don't think the school really knew how to handle it at the time. I think now there are much more supports, and the kids are much more comfortable talking about it. You know, that stigma is starting to dissolve. You know, they're breaking down their walls, and, you know, I know there's concern about you know, asking, how do you make them feel safe? How do you make them feel like they're not, you know, doing something bad by saying that? But I love, Jody, how you say, you know, you tell them how proud you are of coming forward that with actually being able to communicate that. That's such a huge step in
We
the process.
validate them. We validate them. And,
yeah.
you know, honestly, when I went through my program, my master's program in school, we were never taught how to handle a suicidal ideation. I mean, there are a lot of aspects of things that are uncomfortable, right? You get like that broad, you touch on it, but you don't really get a lot of training. And that's been the great thing about the school district, is we are being provided with a lot of training so that we know how to interact with these students and be aware of what the need is. And
That's awesome.
yeah, so I feel more equipped to handle it now than I ever have, as far as even with it being a passion. We've had so much recent training regarding the SRA, and I was trying to read off that youth mental health first aid and got myself all discombobulated. But it's a great program because you are a first aider regarding mental health, and you get that student to somebody that is qualified, like as an assessor, which Manny said, the school psychologist, the school social worker, the school counselors. So we're all getting trained. We're all getting that information.
And just to jump on what Jody's saying there, you know, as much as we're able to help, we're not in the classrooms. We're not, you know, with these students all the time. And so our teachers, our, you know, paraprofessionals, our bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, like those are really that first line of defense. They're going to notice a difference in behavior before we ever get to those students. And that's why they're so important. Because if they're not noticing, they don't know the signs, they might not get to us in time.
Thanks for pointing that out, Alyssa, because that's how we find out a lot of times. You know, they got brought to us by a teacher or a concerned staff member.
And the hope, just to add on to the hope, is that effect continues down to the student body itself, because we are seeing a lot of students that are reaching out because they have concerns for their friends. So again, we want to just create that community where it's not just the staff and employees, but also the students themselves that are looking out for each other.
Yeah. And I think that draws back into what Emily was talking about, you know, earlier when she was talking about her story, is that there was, for her, she noticed there was so much focus on individualism rather than the community, and really bringing back that community aspect. It plays a big role in it too. I saw we had a few more hands up in here. So Blake, are you still with us? I know you had your hand up, and then we'll go to Carol.
I am still with you guys. I just wanted to come on here. I don't really have a question, but Emily, Kelly, thank you so much for being so vulnerable, because your story is going to help so many hopeless lives. And I'm so grateful for you guys, and I'm so happy you're part of NAMI, because that's what we do at NAMI, is we support individuals that are struggling with, you know, personal issues like this. And you guys are strong ladies. So just keep going in your journey, and I'm very proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Gosh, I was trying to type it in the chat, but thank you so much as well. I really appreciate you saying that.
And then Carol, we'll go ahead and move to you. I see you had your hand raised there.
Yes, what everyone else has said about Emily and Kelly has been just so remarkable. This is a very impressive group. I am the president of the Sarasota chapter of Radio United Against Gun Violence. And we know that the incidence of teen suicide by guns has gone up in the past 20 years, quite a bit. And nobody mentioned the word firearms, except I think Alyssa came kind of close by talking about methods.
The number one method.
Well, it is, exactly. And we have tried in Sarasota with this school board for about a year to get a program up that expands the issue. So it's not just one child, one parent. It is a community issue, because we have a package, a toolkit that can go home to every parent about locking up guns, removing guns. We haven't had a response yet. And we've just sent it recently, our program, to the new school superintendent, realizing he's brand new and, you know, he seems to be hitting the ground running, and I love that. But if that's something that you folks, Jody and Alyssa and Manny would keep in mind, it's out there. It's out there, and it's such an important way of involving the home life, the parents, the other people in a family.
Mm-hmm.
You know, ideally they would remove guns, but every family should be locking up their guns, because you don't know who is at risk, particularly in the beginning of an ideation. So anyway, thank you. This has been really something.
Thank you for joining us, Carol. We really appreciate you being here, and we appreciate the work that you're doing as well, because, you know, that's very important. Like we were talking about with Gabrielle earlier, it's important for us on the outside of the school district to bring in as much support as we can for them. You know, we're doing what we can, and we are so thankful that you're a part of our community and you're fighting for our kids as well. So thank you. I think I saw someone else's hand raised, but it might have been by accident because it went down real quick. I didn't catch whose name it was. Let's go through some of the chat here and see if we had any questions. I thought I saw someone asking where they could get that training that Jody was talking about, that the book she held up. Let me see if I can
It's
go.
called
That was for the first.
Yeah, Youth Mental Health First Aid. And you can just go on Google it and sign up with it. I believe anybody can take that course to be a first aider.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And Gabrielle put something in the chat here for school board meetings. Looks like October 3rd at 3 o'clock and October 17th at 6 p.m. Both are Tuesdays. If anyone wants to put that on their calendars and be there to be of support and be an advocate for our kids. Thank you for sharing that. Kelly had also put in here, she feels like the music that kids can listen to can be a sign as well. She said, when I was at my lowest of all, my music was about being depressed and wanting to end it. And I think you were talking about like art that you were drawing as well. You know, it's so funny. Around the time before my suicide attempt, I've been a writer and I wrote a lot of poetry growing up, and I would write some dark stuff. And my mom was like, you're so ahead of your time. You're so artistic. You know, everyone's like, oh, everyone tried to like mask it as something else, but it's like, no, those were probably some pretty obvious signs that there was something deeper going on, you know, as a teenager having dark thoughts like that. you know, while it's expressive, isn't necessarily, you know, something to be ignored or something to be dismissed as just like, you know, a little quirky trait or something of that sort. And also, I think it goes into the complexities of, you know, what signs do you look for? Because there are so many different signs, and sometimes there are no signs. You know, I was a straight A student. I was active in all sorts of extracurricular things. I had future plans, like a month after I was supposed to go hiking on the Appalachian Trail with my school and everything. So, you know, I kind of checked all those boxes and ones outside of the boxes. It's a very complex thing.
Yeah, when you're talking about the art, I don't think I really mentioned it, but like it's almost like I don't remember even doing it, but I could tell it was my work. And like when my parents saw it, they were like it's like knives and like bloody, and I'm just like, what? That's not me. It was weird, yeah. But I don't know. For me, I thought it was like little hidden things, like changing the way you dress all of a sudden, or like I don't know. Yeah, there's hidden like signs, I feel like.
So we got a couple more messages that came in. Giselle mentioned, Carol, it's very, very important point on restricting access to lethal means. Have you considered doing a presentation for the Sarasota Behavioral Health Consortium? This is an issue that is community-wide.
I was actually starting to answer. We speak to various organizations and have through the years, all kinds of different organizations. This particular program is designed for schools and parents because it would go home to the schools, to the parents. But we're happy to speak. It is a broader issue, obviously.
And I think a lot of the, Giselle, a lot of the behavioral health organizations that belong there, and it goes beyond that, it's not just behavioral health, but they work directly with families and students, kids of all ages. So it's just, I think, another way of trying to get that packet out, and maybe eliciting a few other community partners who might be interested in working with you. And we can get you the name, I don't know, of the person who chairs that, you know, and they're always looking for people to present.
That would be helpful, sure.
I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yay, glad we can make some connections there, more collaboration going on. And looks like Gabrielle put some emails in there too for school board members. Thank you for doing that. If you can't attend in person. Let's see, let's go back up in the chat here, see if I missed something. Did anyone else have any questions or comments for our speakers? You can raise your hand or you can turn your mic off. Giselle, why are you laughing?
I'm sorry, I just got the person I was referencing just texted me, who said she's on Facebook, not Zoom, so she can't respond. She's the person who organizes the Sarasota Behavioral Health Stakeholders Consortium, Laura Carson. She said she'd love to have you come and speak to the group. So I'm going to, I'll post her email for you, Carol.
Awesome, thank you. And thanks for tuning in on Facebook. Did anyone else have questions or comments?
Hello.
Oh, Ronald, hello.
Yes, hello. I'm calling from Canada. How's that? West
Thanks
Coast.
for joining us.
You're welcome. I've been volunteering for a few years where we are going to the middle schools and the high schools, and we're talking about suicide prevention. One of the main things is when children or teens are going through things, there's a lot of things, a lot of issues that parents or coaches, counselors don't necessarily see. The real changes that we do see, it would be by they're close friends, right? If an individual is big on sports and all of a sudden this individual is withdrawing. So what it is giving some education to the students so they can watch out for their friends. And then if there is something happening, then it's in regards to redirecting them to somebody of importance. We do about 3,000 to 4,000 students a year, right? Anyways, I know that they have what they call Safe Talk. Have you heard of Assist?
Safe Talk, yes.
Yes. A lovely course. It's half day, and I think it would be wonderful for a lot of people that aren't aware of how to deal with suicide, that it would be very helpful. Myself, I've done Assist, so a couple of years, and I'm always looking for other ways and other techniques to learn more about suicide in regards to protecting people and people's way of lives. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining us and for sharing, Ronald.
Yeah, I just recently completed that assist training and found it really helpful, Ronald. I must say, within the school district, we really push the see something, say something. You know, you don't want to, this is not something that a friend would disclose to you. That is a secret you want to honor. And, you know, and I've often said to the students, you know, you'd rather have a mad friend than a dead friend, right? So you gotta speak up. And a lot of times those students that maybe had a plan and a friend expressed concern to a professional, they thanked them. They may be mad initially, like, I forget if it was it you, Emily, Kelly or Emily, that was saying at first you were upset about kind of people finding out that you were unsuccesssul, but really they get over it, and then they'll thank you. You know, I've had people come back and tell me, you know, I was so mad at you when you initially, you know, responded to, and I felt like you had betrayed me, but thank you for doing that. Thank you for not keeping that secret. So I did want to, if we could, Annalise, just talk really quickly about the upcoming YANA events that are happening, like in Northport and Sarasota. The first one is in Northport High School. I believe it's going to be on October 12th. And that's where that the YANA stands for You Are Not Alone. And that initiative really started after we lost a 6th grade middle schooler at one of the Northport middle schools. And it really pulled the school community and the outside community together. And this is going to be an amazing event with a lot of resources, a lot of tables, a lot of just activities and things just for families. Students can come there, they can get everything they need. We're doing one, like I said, October 12th in Northport. And then there is an upcoming one in November for Sarasota County that's going to be held at Booker Middle School. So these are great events about the community really pulling together in all aspects, the school and agencies. So everybody's, you know, have a table, they're participating, you can get a wealth of information there. So we're really pushing to promote that event.
Awesome. It looks like Kelly said they'll be there too.
Okay, yay. NAMI,
So
yeah.
we had a couple more questions, and then I think we can go into sharing our resources and doing our wrap up. Vicky, if you're still here with us, I know you said you didn't have an icon to raise your hand, but you had a question or a comment you wanted to share.
Well, thank you. I have a comment. I want to make a pitch for health education in schools. I work for a company and I write and work with schools, school health. And I just want to say that health class is not just sex ed. It's not just, you know, traditionally what some of us who are older went through in health class. There's a lot of stuff on healthy and unhealthy relationships. There's stuff on suicide prevention. There are things on bullying prevention, addressing not just the students who are being bullied, but also the the students who are doing the bullying. A lot about self-esteem, about positive body image. And so in the state of Florida, kindergarten through 12th grade, there is only one semester required for health in schools. And that is just heartbreaking. So I just wanted to let everybody know that if you ever have a chance to do any advocating for health in schools, please do, because it's something that the students really need. Thanks.
Thank you, Vicki. I think we can all agree here on how important that is. And then it looks like Tammy, I know Kelly, you had kind of responded to her in the chat, but I'll read Tammy's question out here. She said, I'd love to know from the survivors who are brave enough to share their stories. Thank you, by the way. What factors in our coping skills strategies have been most crucial to your recovery?
I did, yeah, I put some in the chat, but then I'm not a fast enough typer. So I really think that when you guys bring up like asking if somebody is thinking about suicide, any of that, I think that's really genuinely important, because knowing that it won't put that idea in their head, like odds are they already know what suicide means. And I think just having somebody, you don't even have to say like, are you thinking about suicide, but just like any form of that question would have been really, really helpful. And I think that did happen to me at one point. It's just like, wow, like someone can tell. And sometimes you can't even tell yourself, like what I was saying in the beginning, like I didn't know that wasn't normal to feel like that. So having somebody point out like, hey, this doesn't seem normal. It's like, oh, wow. Yeah.
Do we still have Emily here?
Yeah, I said something a little later in the chat, but I can elaborate on it. I just said that for me, kind of like I said earlier, having that access to mental health resources was so crucial for me. And so that's why I'm so like big on advocating for access. And also having support from family and friends, which is why I talked about community. And I also said, I think a big part of the struggles I was having was due to my age, because I had no way of knowing what my future would be like, or that I was even strong enough to deal with the things I was going through. And so that's why I think that peer support is so important for youth, because I think back to me at that time, and I think if I had someone relatively like close to my age who was saying like, I've been through this and like look at me now, I would have felt so much more compelled to be open with this person, because like we were talking about before, I had several involuntary hospitalizations, and that made me just not want to reach out to anyone, because I was scared of the consequences. And I just want to say I really look up to Kelly a lot as a peer specialist. She does things like meet youth at Starbucks, or like go see the Barbie movie with them. And she just builds that kind of connection with them, kind of like an older like sibling, but then it just opens up like so much possibility for hope and inspiration. So yeah, shout out to Kelly and peer support.
Woohoo. Love that. I think that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I don't want to get too lost on time here, and I do have a few more things that I want to share before you guys hop off. So let me pull up my screen here. So we have some resources that we wanted to share. There are tons of resources out there, and we're going to share even more than what I'm going to have on screen here when we send the recap out of the recording of tonight's event. So for people who are tuning in just now, we are recording this, so it is available for later viewing. We send out all the resources that we list here along with our recording and additional ones. So the first one is NAMI of Sarasota, Manatee counties. And like they had mentioned earlier, Youth Move Suncoast, which is a peer-led group for youth and young adults living with a mental health condition. And it is a national program. We do have a local one, but you can visit or learn more about the national program at Youth Move National. and you can learn about the Sarasota program at NAMI-SarasotaManatee.org. Also have some young adult support groups with NAMI and Palm Beach County on Fridays. All the schedules for that is on the NAMI website, as well as the Family Navigator program. This is a no-cost program, peer support for families in Sarasota County with children under the age of 24 experiencing mental health challenges. And then, as we touched on the other resource, YANA, You Are Not Alone. And this is a safe space for adults 18 and older who are facing mental health challenges, and it's open to those who are interested in learning more about the program. If you want to just pop in on a Wednesday from 10 to 2, or you can schedule a visit or reach out to Katie at NAMI Sarasota Manatee. And then we have the Florida Suicide Prevention Coalition, which is a nonprofit organization that offers help, hope, and resources to those experiencing issues related to suicide and those who have had a loss to suicide. And I also have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline there. You can dial 988 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then we also have, which Giselle and I think Gabrielle had mentioned in the chat there, the Trevor Lifeline for LGBTQ plus youth. And that's at thetrevorproject.org. You can call, you can text for support there as well. And then we have the Jason Foundation. And the mission statement for the Jason Foundation is dedicated to the prevention of the silent epidemic of youth suicide through educational and awareness programs that equip young people, educators, and youth workers and parents with the tools and resources they need to help identify and assess at-risk youth. And then last but not least, we have the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. And their mission is to save lives and bring hope to those affected by suicide. And then the last thing we're going to share is the Walk With Us to Prevent Suicide event. Jody, if you want to say a few words about that. Oh, are you still there? Are you muted? Where'd you go?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
That's okay.
So, yes, I'm working on the planning committee for this, and I'm very excited about it. It's the Sarasota Out of the Darkness Walk. And on that flyer, it has the little barcode, or you can go to their website and register. It's free to walk. And it's just a really great uplifting day. Lots and lots of resources there. It's early in the morning, so you can go and do the walk and then be done by 10:30, 11 o'clock and get on with the rest of your Sunday. But it's a wonderful event, and it brings a lot of like-minded people together, from survivors to those that are professionals in the field, agencies. It's just a great event. So I would love for you to come. The school district, we have a team that's called Together We Can. So if you want to join our team, you are more than welcome to. The more the merrier. And we'll just meet you out there. I'll be holding a sign. We're holding a sign so you can find me. But it's just a great cause. And we got to get the awareness out there. Yeah.
Thank you, Jody. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you to all of our speakers for such an amazing conversation. Thank you for everyone that tuned in nationwide, Canada, all over the place. Thank you guys so much. Like I said, this is going to be recorded, so we will send it out at the end of the week with more resources. Before we hop off here, I do just have one more little poll, if you guys can take that for me. If you learned anything new tonight, did you learn anything new? And if you learned anything new, do you plan on using it in your life? And where? At work, with your family, with your friends? You'll take a moment to fill that out. I know we're going past our 7:30 stop time. I try to be really prompt about that because I know it runs into dinner time, our meetings, guys. But I'd love if you have the chance to fill that in. We love to know when people are actually learning things and getting useful information from these conversations. That's what keeps it going is, when people tell us, oh my God, I didn't know this, or oh my God, listening to this helped me want to share my story or help me reach out to someone. We love to hear that. We love to know that what we're doing is working and making a difference and having an impact in individual lives in the community as a whole. So we really appreciate that. And thanks guys for tuning in. You don't have to feel free to hang out here if you've already filled out the survey. You can drop off. I'll just hang out here with lovely faces that want to hang out. Thanks for everyone in the comments leaving beautiful messages. I'm going to make sure to send these to our speakers so they can go back and review them. I do that. I don't know if you guys do that. If someone sends me a nice comment, I'm like, screenshot that and you have a little folder and you go back to it later and you can pump yourself up and you're like, man, I did really good. I made a difference here. I did something. So I'll send that to you guys. Thank you guys. Looks like we just got about everyone filling out the poll here. So I'm going to go ahead and end that. And I will call that a wrap for the evening. Thank you again, everybody. Have a wonderful Monday evening and a wonderful rest of your week. Bye now.